Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome in, my horny little devils, or my sex freaks. I like to be called that. Mainly everybody, especially men, and I know they do this often, you like to brag about how long you can last in the bedroom. But what's really the normal duration of sex? Everybody says they can do this, they can do that, make it last really long in the bed, hold out. And there are those people who are able to control their orgasm, so a good length of time. However, believe it or not, according to a 2005 Society for Sex, vaginal sex typically lasts 3 to 7 minutes. Only 3 to 7 minutes. Now, is that too short? Is it too long? I don't think it's too long. But you gotta think about it. I think once, you orgasm, you start to dry down there. But nowadays people are, because masturbation has become such a tool, shall I say, for you to be able to, last a little longer. Now, it's funny because most sex therapists, they surveyed some sex therapists, shall I say, and they said that anywhere from 7 to 13 minutes is desirable. Okay. Now, really, when we're just on length of sex, or how long should sex be, it primarily depends on how you define sex, I would presume. Well, okay. If you just, a way to relieve yourself, get in there, wham, bam, thank you, man. If you're there and you're enjoying each other, it's a form of bonding, intimacy. You want it to last, or it could just be that contest just to show that you can last in the bedroom, or, this is manly. And usually you get into a measurement fight. Who's got the longest penis? Why not, bring out the fact that, I can last longer in bed than you can. Or talk about your sexual endeavors in the bedroom. And believe it or not, that is sometimes what the men talk about. But the women get up there too, and they start talking about, how they're able to hold off, or they squirt, or they do whatever in the bed, or, I mean, nowadays it is so out there, and so more outspoken than it was back in the day. And, it really, sex is taking on a different view and a different meaning to some people. Most people believe or define sex as when you climax or have an orgasm. That is the end of sex. And that's as long as both of the parties, you and your partner, or you and your partners, depending on what kind of sexual relationship you are having at that moment in time, when you have that orgasm, that's it. Sex is done. And that is your definition of it. There are other kinds of sex which is achieved through touching, oral sex, obviously vaginal sex, and the anal sex, or a combination of them. However, this, like actual sexual intercourse, the penetration, is just a component of what sex is. So if you want to look at it, and you're adding in all the factors of foreplay, outer play, whatever play in between, to get up to that orgasm, well, yes, you will be at it for a longer length of time. If you define sex as the penetration and how long you are in and thrusting back and forth, well, that one you're going to need to work on. There's got to be some control in it. There are, like I said, with masturbation being so prevalent nowadays and used more widely than years ago, you become, what is it? The more you masturbate, the more control you have over your orgasm later on. And you can control how and when. And this, a lot of people say, no, you can't. Yeah, you can. Absolutely. It is what that is. And the length is how you are able to, or what you define, like this one question, what you define what sex is to you. What does sex involve? Could always be one of our former presidents and say, he never stuck it in, basically. But hey, it's Monica Lewinsky. Look at me, tongue-tied over my own words. If you define sex by only the fact of how long that you can stay erect until your ejaculation, well, you better work on that. There's a lot more factors to sex, but you need to define it for yourself first before you can put a time limit on it. If you're just talking about sheer penetration, boom, 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 you both got off, well, that might be a little shorter than you think it is. Another thing you want to think about is what you want out of an encounter when it comes to sex. That's important. Hence what I'm going into. Obviously, sex should be pleasurable overall, especially in that moment. This really comes down to personal preference. Some people, obviously, most people, want long, sensual encounters sexually. And then where there's others, which is another type, and this can be just at that moment where you want it fast and aggressive, eat that, lunchtime get together and you get together and just keep it. That might be one of your definitions of sex, that continued thought after you have been came home and had sex with your partner, then went back to work and keeping it in your mind. It is really a key to having satisfied sex as opposed to beating the clock. What is satisfying to you during sex? You can't fight biology. It's just the way we are built. There are some biological factors or underlying biological factors that may affect how long your sexual activity lasts. Finding out if you have a medical issue or there's something terribly wrong, please look into it. Age comes into place. Obviously, as you get older, you find that it takes longer to become aroused. Erections are more difficult to achieve and maintain. And hormonal changes, definitely in women, contribute to things like where vaginal dryness comes in, or a decreased actually a decreased libido. There's a mismatch of libidos as time goes on, and what is for you one way might not be the same for your partner. Genitalia. The shape of your genitals may just be a factor. More competitive. Duh. But that is kind of how the male body works. And it allows in and out. Bing, 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 bing. It results in more semen displacement. So the more you're displacing, I guess the shorter the time you're going to last. This, believe it or not, actually allows the the male partner, to make room for their own semen. And obviously, if you're in there for reproduction purposes, that is actually good. It's really funny because when the study was conducted, they actually stated that the using of competitive evolution as a backdrop, this actually could explain why some people find it painful to keep thrusting after ejaculation, meaning male counterparts. After you come, you go limp. I probably sure there is someone out there that does not, but that is how your body is built, and generally is actually painful for you. And why you would continue to do that, I don't know. Another way that affects or has some sort of effect on how long sex should be would be sexual dysfunction. Obviously, premature ejaculation comes to the top of the forefront. Obviously, we all know what that is. It's ejaculating well before you prefer to. There are people who have the opposite effect of that, which is delayed ejaculation. This is, it takes you longer to have an orgasm. And that might just be how you explain, oh, I lasted this long in the bed. Well, yes and no. Yes, you lasted longer, but there may be some sort of issue as to why it took you longer to orgasm. You know, little delays. Could it be something you don't like about your partner? Is it something you don't like the way you're having sex or something? It could be something that's right there in the moment. It could be something medical. You gotta really check these things out. You don't want to play with that. Now, if you want, like I spoke earlier, a shorter encounter, obviously the quickie is always nice to have. Little quick sex there makes that longer one really appreciated. Obviously, if you want to last longer, I've been saying it this whole entire session, masturbate. Gives you more control. Gets away from, it kind of sort of gets you at whereas you won't easily just, whoop, there you go, you're done. Masturbating before gives you, it's more of it takes you longer, shall I say, to obviously come out for that second turn around. So if you have a vast feeling you're going to get overexcited and come too fastly, have that orgasm way too fast, play with yourself, get it out of the way so that when you are with your partner, it lasts longer. That's all I can say. It will last longer. There are different ways, especially on the woman. You can rub your clitoris, gently pinch or pull your nipples, gyrate your hips, do something, smack your behind, it puts your mind elsewhere. Might be a turn on, who's to say? But ending on that note, we are going to go on our first break of the show. Please get that snack, get that drink, come back, get relaxed, and we will continue our subject matter of how long is normal sex and how we can make it longer in the bed. So we'll be back here for more sex talk with Andra.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex from the point of view of an older woman. Now, welcome back. I hope you have your snack and your drink, and you are relaxed because we're going to continue on with the question, how long is normal sex supposed to be? Or is sex normal? The length of time? Come on, those questions always come up. There's always a competition out there. Who can last the longest? So, continuing on with where we left off in the touch yourself category. Now, you can also go about this by mutual masturbation, in which you each pleasure yourselves, And you can, watch. Maybe try each of you's going into different rooms, playing with yourselves with that mere thought in your mind that your partner is masturbating and vice versa in a different room, then getting together and working on it and lasting longer. You're being intimate in the situation, but you climax a little, have a quicker orgasm, get out that, that what is it, where you just orgasm too fast. You don't want to feel as though, wow, that didn't really do much. You had all this thought in your head and boom, that was it. The thing is, you can tell your partner what you want. Because if you are going to communicate your desires to your partner, and this goes for both partners each way, it also gives that partner that understanding on how to get you to orgasm, or how to, where you can start that up, then bring it down, where you get them all the way to the end and just stop. And just play around that way. These are all fun ways. And you can play games. Obviously, you can utilize anything that you learn from one another to get to that mutual gratification of that orgasm, quickies as it may be. Another way to last longer in the bed is try climax inducing positions. There are a lot of positions out there, certain positions that make that feel better for you as opposed to somebody else, which helps you to be able to go a little slower or get a little deeper in penetration. And this helps because the deeper you go in, the better for you, because you're going to, it's going to make you climax, but it's more of a way of doing positions that are going to help you and your partner at the same time to do that much better. And, who's to say? You're going to love it either way. And you get positions that are deeper penetration, and both you and your partner are enjoying it. It's a win-win situation there. And the sex will last longer. So, and I will go over some things later. Some ways to help it, to get it a little longer on. And where you are, after you finish, you can talk about it and say, whoa, that was awesome. Let's try that again, but this time go slower or something like that. Who's to say? Now, if you want longer encounters, now this is, if you want to prolong your, that sexploration, there are some techniques that you can use. Now, the first one is Siemens stop-start technique. And I believe I just touched on this. Bringing you to that edge of sexual stimulation where you feel as though you're close to just getting that orgasm. If they just did it that tiny bit longer, whatever it is they're doing, and then they stop. And he brings you down. And then it brings you back up to that right on the edge, and then bringing you back down. So this is a way of prolonging it. Obviously, seeing how long you can do that for is going to be quite interesting within itself. There is the Johnson and Masters squeeze technique. Now, this technique entitles gently squeezing the end of the penis for several seconds just before ejaculation until the urge subsides. It can also actually be used to practice ejaculatory control. So there is an exercise there for you guys. Now, the bottom line in this, to some extent, is you really need to decide how you're defining that sexual encounter. What is it in there for you? Communicate, find different ways. Mutual masturbation, or just masturbate before you're going to go over to your partner's house, or if you're home and your partner's out and they're going to be home later on, and you've been having a little difficulties here and there, masturbate, because by the time they get there, you'll be ready to go again. And that will take longer because you've already gotten out that initial, oh my God, I'm just going to lose it. Orgasm right then and there. It'll take 2 seconds. So you really want to decide how you're going to do this. And this is something that the both of you do. You can try some of those techniques, very simple techniques. But you got to be really, I think that I guess I shouldn't even say it because more people want it to last longer. But if you're doing it and then all of a sudden once he's done or once you're done and boom, that's it, you need to really sit down and really define what it means to you. What actual portion of anything is involved in the sex? Is it just that penetration and getting to that orgasm and boom, that was sex? Or do you consider all the things outside of that are considered sex that gets you to that moment of that orgasm? And then put a clock on the table and take, time yourselves. Are there sexual norms? What are the sexual norms? We really don't know. I mean, we always wonder if we are, individually, if we are sexually normal. I mean, you may be curious about how often, say, your friends are having sex or what type of sexual activities they're doing. Okay, that can go a little too far, so please control that. Don't go over the borderline of that. And this way you can only get off because of them. Or thinking of what they're doing. Really don't be embarrassed by anything. Having that natural, oh my goodness, imagine how they're having sex or what they're doing in the bedroom compared to when you are meeting them and talking with them or going to dinner with them or having house parties and having them over for dinner parties. It is natural for you to wonder about other people's sex lives. Do they last longer? What's their preference? Perfectly normal. Most people, when they meet a partner for the first time, they have to imagine that they're able to have sex with that partner before even having a conversation with them. They can have a conversation, but it will never go past that. Obviously, our individual preferences of sex fluctuate throughout our lives. So what's considered quote unquote normal one day for you may not be the same sexually normal for you the next day. Or say a couple of months down the line or a year down the line. You don't know what the next day is going to bring. So, how often? How often do most people have sex? Again, that really depends on what you consider to be sex or how you're defining it. Some people think it's just vaginal intercourse or oral sex or mutual masturbation. It has to do with your marital status, your age, or your health. Those things do make a difference. But really, when you get down to that bottom line, the only thing that really matters is satisfaction for you and your partner. Your sexual repertoire. Now, the National Survey of Sexual Health and Behavior actually did a study and found that Americans between the age of 14 and 94 have quite a repertoire when it comes to sex. It's never about just one sex act. Actually, the respondents of this had 40 combinations of sex acts. But vaginal intercourse is the most common and shared activity. But they did find that oral sex and partnered masturbation was also popular. Another question. Who's using a condom? Obviously, that is a risk that you take. I do always say, please practice safe sex. And the condoms are so out there right now. They're coming up with the times. Oh my goodness. They're selling them and it's not, obviously all the drugstores always have had rubbers and things like that. But now they're actually selling dildos in CVS, vibrators, everything in there. And I am besides myself every time I go in there and I see it. This was never like that. I mean, you had to sneak to buy rubbers and it was always the man's job to do it and get them from the store, and generally the store you went into knew your family, and now your business is going to be over, they're going to tell your parents and everything, oh, they're having sex, they came in and bought rubbers today. But it's not like that anymore. In a way, that is a good thing, because now things don't have to be, you don't have to sneak around to get them. You can just get them. They're there. They're at your disposal. Nothing in it. Oh, that elusive orgasm. Now, the same survey, and this is on sexual behaviors, 85% of the men say their partner had an orgasm the last time they had sex. Okay, this might be a situation where Harry met Sally. Girls are very good at faking. We have practiced that stuff, let me tell you. So, don't ever think that that's true, because obviously a smaller percentage of women say they had an orgasm during their last encounter. And I'm assured that they were in that encounter, were not getting anything out of it, but didn't want their partner to feel bad, so they faked it. I'm just saying, it is there. Obviously for men, vaginal intercourse is a type of sex most likely to lead to orgasm, because that's the whole thing. However, women actually orgasm more often when oral sex or another form of stimulation is included maybe a little bit more in there. So remember that. There is no normal for the female, obviously. But who's to say? With that, and on that note, we are going to take our second break in the show. Please replenish your drink and your snack. Come back here. Relaxed again in that comfy little chair. And I will meet you back here to continue our discussion on how long is sex supposed to last. I'll meet you back here with Andra for more sex talk.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am still your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman, and our topic today is, how long should sex be? How can I last longer in the bed? All reasonable questions. Very, very reasonable. And continuing on with that in the sex norms, I go on to sexual orientation. Now, we in society are faced with several societal sexual orientation, shall I say, and identify as such. Still comes down to what you like, how you like it, and nowadays there really are no sex norms for your sexual orientation. Well, and if there is, believe it or not, it was worse back in the day, because if you ever said that you were gay, lesbian, bi, that was not normal. Not normal at all. So, just remember that. You need to come into knowing that, sexual development in children is at their own rate, but they're outside, or maybe outside of the normal range. When it comes to that, that's okay. As children grow, they are, even when they're young, exploring and becoming quite in tune with what their bodies are, or that curiosity factor of knowing you have an innate and I have an outie. Teen talk is another. talk with them because nowadays everybody's having sex way younger and having babies at the same time. So, sex is not for the young. It is very important that sexual activity is part of their lives. However, they can wait. Just as simple as that. But the young can wait. Now, sex is not just for the young. That's where I was going with the next one. Whereas people over the age of 45, happen to say that sexual activity is a very important part of their lives and has a direct impact on the quality of their life. It's a lot more relaxed. This study really went on, and they found that like 30% of these individuals were having sexual intercourse at least once a week. But they did report a variety of sexual interests that they will go into. They also like caressing and hugging and touching. I'm being pleased if they have to give it up. Just because they're getting older does not mean that they do not desire the act of sex. Those other behaviors. A lot of people don't like to talk about sex candidly. They are either embarrassed or the mere fact of the matter that it should stay behind closed doors and just include you and your partner and no one else needs to know. Nowadays, that's not that easy. So, you can say that all you want, but that's not what's going on. But some candid sexual activities that are talked about are celibacy, erotic fantasy or role-playing, pornography, BDSM, bondage, domination, and submission, and masochism. Anal sex, which has become quite popular recently, within the last some odd years. I'm assured it was being done way back in the Greek era, but it's really prevalently done now, even more. Changing attitudes. Just discuss sex with an inflate company. Talk about it, ask for seek professional advice. These are or were taboo topics, but now they're not. You can talk more openly about masturbation, homosexuality, your sexual preference, and you can still keep what you do in the privacy of your own home. But ask them. They might have something that's different for you that might just work to help you to stay, have a longer encounters of sex. I mean, every little minute counts, but I mean, how easily is it that you can last 20 minutes or longer in the bed? I mean, a sex session, 5 to 7 minutes. Or even lower than that in the beginning. I mean, everybody has had different outlooks on this. Believe it or not, 50% of guys last less than 2 minutes. So, who's not holding up their end of the deal? It's not, I mean, if you want to go in and you have that quickie, then you know what you were going for. Orgasm really quick. That's what you were there for. Just to get that, basically, and get that intenseness out of it and everything else. It's really funny that some guys will actually say that. They admit that normally lasts for about 1 to 2 minutes. Is that a major problem? Could be a major problem. Heaven only knows. The ideal length of sex is between 10 and 25 minutes. The longer the better. And believe it or not, statistics show that 80% of guys, men, the male population, suffer from some form of premature ejaculation and can't pull that off. So you have very difficult time getting to that 30 minutes. Both of us, women and men, want longer lasting sex, but guys lack the sexual stamina to make it happen. Again, masturbate before you go. This will help you to prolong your orgasm. I mean, there's things that trying to improve on it, go on the internet, but here are some ways that you can last longer in the bed. You need to reduce your sexual anxiety, because that might exactly be what it is. If you go into sex, thinking that you're not going to last very long, obviously you're not going to last very long. Anxiety has such an effect on your sexual behavior. And with that, you will have difficulties. The insecurity of loss, thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to last that long, is getting you anxious. Your body knows that. So your body's going to say, nope. If you're too anxious during sex, it reduces the amount of time you're in a vulnerable state. And that subjects you to either premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. We don't want this. The way to approach this is to approach sex with a confident, positive outlook on how you yourself are going to perform in the bed. What's the best way to do that? Well, let's see. You can bring up some concerns about how long you're lasting, and that you want to work on it with your partner. They're not going to think less of you. Believe me or not, they'd rather you say something to them, because they're probably thinking the same thing. So they want to find out how they can help you, or you can help them to last longer. So remember that. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed about it. You don't have to worry about that. Now, the step 2, daily exercise for lasting longer. There are only 2 things you need to do regularly to control your premature ejaculation: Kegel exercises and masturbation practice. Come on, people. Masturbation is a man's best friend. Exercise is Kegels and reverse Kegels. And you do that less than 10 minutes a day. You need to improve the control of your ejaculation. And doing these exercises strengthens the muscles that control the ejaculation. So you have more control of it. It will train your pelvic wall muscles to help you control when to ejaculate. So, although Kegel balls are generally for men, they are here for you as well. There are a lot of articles out there that you can go to, put it in. They'll even give you instructions how to do the exercises with the Kegel balls. And, they're actually Kegel exercises for men and reverse Kegels. And this is to help you out. Now, this is what you should do. Obviously, get naked. This is going to be fun. Put your finger or two on the skin between your legs behind your balls. But before your anus. There's a space right there, guys. Now imagine you're trying to stop yourself from peeing. Flex that muscle. This is also the muscle you flex to make your penis dance. When it's hard, don't give... I know you're thinking it. I can feel it. And you guys do it all the time, so don't think you don't. You should feel some sort of movement where you put your fingers, and you might feel movement in your penis and balls. Don't flex your ass like you're trying to show off your glutes. Don't flex your legs, and don't flex your abs. Focus just on that flexing muscle. If you're really having trouble with this or finding it, which you should have an easy way to find it, then drink a bunch of water, go pee, and try to stop yourself. And that's how you do it. We are going to take a break here. And it is the last break of the session, of the show, of the segment. So, and we will come back and continue on with, ways to be able to last longer in the bed or make sex longer for you. So, meet me back here. More sex talk with Andra. Stay relaxed.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Now, we're going to continue on with our subject matter of how long is sex supposed to be, and ways to kind of prolong it. So we were on the last where we were actually just feeling the space between the anal hole and the scrotum on a man, and how to massage that. And the best way is to, wait until you really have to pee and go pee, and then to control it, to stop it, to feel the muscle. Same thing with ejaculation. Now this is actually called pubococcygenius. Don't ask, I have no idea. Muscle, so we'll just call it the PC muscle. Or the pelvic floor, whichever floats your boat. And this particular area can control the flow of urine. It also does it for ejaculation. Little buddies there. Working with this particular muscle, strengthening it up, and really making it so that the control is by you. It's training. It's almost like training your body to look like six packs. You work out. Abs are your target, but you really have to work at it. There is an app out there that you can use. It's called Stamina. It gives you specific directions on how long to clench and push for, and the different speeds to do it at. They also have the Kegel Trainer app on the Google Store. I would presume the other one is too. Does not say any different. But Stamina and Kegel Trainer. Try them out. See how they work. Next exercise would be masturbation and edging 10 to 30 minutes a day. We all know what masturbation is. Edging is starting the actual masturbation and getting yourself all the way to the end and stopping. And then starting it back up again. But this is where you can gain control. Now, why are there graphs? If things are like escalating through edging, and you can do this later during the sex, but also incorporate it into masturbating. And here, this is how this works. You start masturbating and get yourself up to 7 out of 10 on the arousal scale. You'll just have to subjectively decide what this is for you. It'll be easier to identify when you practice it, obviously. 2, you gotta stop and let yourself simmer down for 5 minutes. Now work up to an 8, and then stop and let yourself slide down again to a 6. Up to 9, down to 7. Up to 9.5, down to 7 again. The 9.5 is just before the point of no return, people. You know there's nothing you can do. And number 6 on that is repeat the 9.5 to 7 cycle over and over again until you get past 10 minutes. So this is a feat trying to get you to go from ground zero to you rubbing an area to strengthen it, which will be beneficial for you in the long run. But do some of these things. Now, as you're becoming more aroused when doing these things, there's actually something you should remember. The stab technique. Boy, I'm having a bad night. And you do this slow to slow down yourself. You squeeze the PC muscle, which is that muscle behind the balls and between the anus. And you squeeze those muscles hard like you're going to intense Kegel. You got to hold them for at least 10 seconds. But the longer you can hold them, the more you'll come down. This might also have success doing a couple shorter second holds or a bunch of quick 1 second holds. So remember that. Think, and this means think about something else. Avoid, change your stroke. Avoid the head, don't touch it. Instead of stopping entirely, just change your stroke. Breathe, take deep diaphragmatic breath with your stomach. Now this is, you should be able to combine all of these to get better control over your ejaculation over time. Doesn't happen overnight, people. I know that you would like it to, but you can't. So really find that 20 minutes to set aside and play. Very, very, or should I say practice? Sorry. Practice. Best way to do it. Now, if you have a partner you'd rather do this with, tell him or her what you're working on and ask help either with manual or mouth stimulation. Ooh. Or by having slow sex with a lot of stopping and starting. So that's where that comes in. It's very, very tempting when you're doing this. When you get all the way up to that peak and you just want to go over the hump, you're stopping it. And it's like the best thing. Step 3, techniques for lasting longer during sex. Well, you can get all this training done. Let's go in and see what we got for this. Strategic foreplay ordering. Usually when we think of foreplay, and it usually starts out with kissing, touching, cuddling, fellatio, or sex. There's an obvious problem here. You're going straight from the intense oral stimulation to sex. No. You want to be going into sex at a 4 or 5, not an 8. So you really want to bring it down when they get to stimulated and you're during sex, bring it down. And to give you a few topics on what you could do. You're already talking about your partner, about lasting longer. Unless you skipped down here, shame on you. You know better than that. So you tell that tell your partner that it would be better if you got her off once manually. And it's just to warm her up. Then she went down on you. Then you went down on her after. Hey, we gotta flip them deals. When you're receiving oral, after you get to a 9.5 a couple of times, not just once, a couple, switch it up so you can cool down while you go down on your partner. So it's basically getting to that edge, stopping it, going on with your, swapping off with your partner. Use sex positions for edging, which we did talk about those. Edging during foreplay is easier, but during sex it's a little different. Do you want to stop and keep stopping and starting thrusting, since that's going to be a little bit frustration for her? Maybe not. Depends on the person you're with and what's going on right now. And at that point, you'll probably get performance anxiety, and you don't want that. And just edge yourself up by switching positions. These are a few of the sexual positions that you can use and combine. One is the friction, more equals faster. Direction, the motion thrusting, faster back and forth. Control your movements equals faster. Her moving equals slower. Now, a person with your partner's legs would close plus you doing the thrusting while lying down. Missionary, of course. You will be able, your highly stimulation and get you off faster because you're watching her and you're paying attention to what's going on with your partner. These are all things that you should know and can research this. Do breathing slowly from the diaphragm as well. There's some stomach breathing, but there's some from the diaphragm. And that helps you. Last second squeeze when to get too close. The first 3 tips generally will help you begin to stay in the 5 to 9 range. When it happens when you get up to that 9.9 and you don't think there's any way to stop yourself from coming, this is where you're training those PC muscles has led to. So they're getting in their positiones. So that would be that. At one point in time, you are at point of no return, and you're gonna let it loose because that's what you went in there for. I don't care what anybody says. You're in there because this is what you want. So the sex is there. communicate, do different things, deeper pelvic or deeper penetration to help you with that. Practice masturbation on your own. It is beneficial. I know a lot of people don't like to hear it, but it is beneficial just for this topic alone. Staying, working on, if you haven't had sex for a really long time and you're going to go back to have it, one, get past the anxiety, but two, you might just have premature ejaculation. So please do masturbate. Get it out of the system so that you can go in for the long run with sex. That is the end of my show. And thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, we ask, or I am asking, to subscribe to the show. Also, you can see us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So go out there and hit that like button. It helps us here at GSMC Podcast. Now, if there is something that you want to hear on the show, please put it there and it will get to me. So enjoy the rest of your evening, because I know I am, and just find ways that you personally or not have to last. So please have a great evening. However, also, please do practice safe sex. If not for you, find out for yourself. Remember that. Very, very important. And I am out. Have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.